Okay, since I do not have a Promethean yet, I'm just going to have you do this way. And we're just going to go over our goals for life science. The first chapter, and actually this is not the first chapter in our book. They call it NOS something, Nature of Science. Okay, so it is before chapter 1. So at the beginning, there's like a table of contents and some stuff, and then it'll say like NOS page 1, NOS page 2. So that's where that is. So when we're using our books, that's where that will be. Basically, what this chapter is about is it's just like basic knowledge about things that you've been doing for the last several years with science. Okay, so it started out, we'll do this before most chapters, so it says unit learning goal number 1. I will understand key terms about life science, including, so these are the terms below are things that you should know by the end of the chapter, and a lot of these things you know already now, but it's just kind of review. So first of all, to classify something, you will know what that means. We use classifications in our everyday life all the time. So we use it in science all the time with kingdoms and things like that. We're gonna do some measuring. We actually have a measuring lab where we're just gonna measure like the length of things, and we can weigh some things and liquids as well. So good practice. That'll be one lab day. We're gonna make predictions based on knowledge, draw inferences based on knowledge. Hypothesis, you guys have probably used that for an educated guess. You probably used that a lot in the past. Making observations with our senses. We see things. You guys are observing me right now. You're listening to me, hopefully. You're looking at me. You could touch me. Don't lick me, please. You could smell me. So these are all ways to make observations. So we'll talk about things like spontaneous generation, which is something you're probably not familiar with, and biogenesis as well. Other things, we're going to analyze information, talk about what a theory is, estimate something when we don't need to know exact knowledge, we can just make an estimate. Talk about experiments, stimuli, cells, and models. So these are all things most of these things you probably know about already, but we're just going to kind of review because they're important for the whole year. We're going to identify the 8 characteristics of life. So all living things have this, or all living things do these certain things. Okay? We're going to explain or describe the scientific theories concerning the origin of life on Earth. So there are theories about where did this life come from, and we'll just go through that a little bit. So we're going to talk the scientific method steps. That's probably something you did with Miss Ebert, I'm guessing. They might be slightly different than what you're used to, but pretty similar. We'll solve some problems with that. We're also going to have use some microscopes. We'll have a microscope lab talking about things like how do we turn it on, how do we find things, how do we label it, and things like that. We're going to talk about the metric system. Science uses the metric system, so instead of feet and yards, it's meters and centimeters. We'll use kilometers instead of miles. We'll use kilograms and grams instead of pounds. So we'll get into that a little bit. We'll brush up on how to make a graph. I'll give you some information. You'll have to make a graph. So these are things that you've probably done in other classes, science and other classes, but they're important skills. And then explain the ways to keep your science classroom safe. So since we are going to have a lot of labs, I'll have some rules for that as well. So this is what this first chapter will be about, and by the end of this chapter you will know the answers to all of these questions. Okay? All right.